Every one of us at some point in time has called a company, got put on hold, and suffered at length through a robotic-sounding on-hold voice that makes waiting on hold even more torturous. But we as voice actors can also help solve this problem and save the sanity of the world at large simply by embracing the genre of telephony and marketing our services to those companies. Now, if you ask around in the voiceover industry, who should I talk to about telephony? One name comes up all the time, every single time. She's a bilingual voice actor, English and French, who's been running her business for nearly 2 decades. Her clients include Lazy Boy, Pure One Imports, and Porsche. Welcome to the show, Liz de Nesnera. Did I get it right?
Close. De Nesnera is like an SH in the middle of it. It's a Hungarian name, so it messes everybody up. It's okay.
One of those. I was like, practice. I'm going to practice. I'm going to say it over again, because otherwise it's going to come out Liz.
Yeah. Whenever I call customer service, they was like, "Oh, can we have your name, please?" And I basically say, "Yep, it's Liz de Nesnera," or I usually say it's Elizabeth de Nesnera. Just call me Liz. It'll make your life easier. And I just hear this audible sigh. It's like, okay, good. So,
thank you. And don't make me spell it.
Yes. Oh, well, my pat answer to that is, how do you pronounce it? Smith. and I get this, huh? Okay. It's all right. It's all good.
So I want to talk to you about telephony, and we're going to go there.
Yes.
But there's one thing we need to get to first.
Yes.
You have massively upped your social media game in the last little bit. And
yes,
you are popping up on my video feeds all the time. And you seem like you're having a lot of fun.
I am.
Talk to us about that.
Oh my God. I'm having so much fun. So before August 1st of this year, I had never uploaded a reel to Instagram ever. Like I think I'd uploaded 1 or 2 videos, but I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
And so I actually, Jonathan Tilley, who probably a lot of people know, he was doing this 30-day Instagram challenge.
Okay.
And he actually sent me a DM. He sent me a message saying, "Hey, I'm doing this Instagram challenge." And I texted him back. I was like, there's a lot going on right now. I'm not sure I have the bandwidth for this. And I just looked at it and I said, you know what? Let me just try. Let me just see. Yep. I'd never done any of this. Mark, I will tell you, most people say social media is really bad for your mental health. Can I tell you, I have been having so much fun.
It has been so obvious as a viewer.
It is so fun. And I think part of it is, and yes, a lot of it is about my business. It's this voiceover talent does this and this, and that's fine. That was my goal. That was the goal of the challenge for 30 days. And so I did it for the 30 days. Okay. And then I was like, you know what? I'm not going to stop. I'm having too much fun, and anything for my mental health these days, I'm going to keep doing. And so the permission part of it is, when I first heard about Instagram, it was like, oh my goodness, it's got to be this long, that long. Mine are generally no longer than about 15 seconds. And it's just fun. And what's happened is I feel like there's this creative floodgates that were opened. That's and awesome. I think about things and things come up and, and sometimes I'll get towards the end of the day and it's like, oh, I haven't done anything. And then it's like, well, what about this? And it'll take me 15, 20 minutes to do. But it's so much fun. I mean, one of them, which I'm amazed at, one of my videos has over 11,000 views.
That's amazing.
Which is insane, and I don't claim to be, fantastic at it. And I'm sure I'm doing some things, quote unquote, wrong. I don't care. I'm having fun. And it's been great for my enjoyment, and it's something creative to do. So yeah, it's been a blast, and I've been since August 1st of this year. So I'm just going to keep going until it's not fun anymore, and then we'll figure it out. But yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
I love it because I think there's a couple of really important lessons in there for people. First and foremost, you fully admit that you don't know what you're doing, but you're just figuring it out, which is totally overcoming the perfection paralysis, not overthinking it, right? Just do it. Just do it.
And I'm a Virgo, so there's a lot.
Me too. So I feel you on that. You on that. But you just did it.
Yeah.
And are you finding that content begets content? Like,
yes.
As you start to do it, all of a sudden ideas that weren't there before start to flow a little more freely?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I literally, like, the first week of doing this, it was like, oh my God, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing.
I got no ideas.
Oh my God. You know, and the first few ones took like 2 hours to do, you know, because I was still learning the platform. I was, but what I am, and it's true, what I'm really proud of myself about is that I pushed through that initial, it was uncomfortable because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was, and anybody who's on Instagram for any length of time knows Instagram is glitchy. And it just, you know, sometimes it's like, nope, we're not going to upload your reel.
Not today. Thanks for
playing. Not today. Nope, we're not going to do that. So getting over the fact that that's not only happening to me, and the other thing is, let's be real. It's Instagram, you know, I mean, it's not, you know, it's
we're not making Hollywood movies here, people. We're just having some fun on the internet.
And that's really it.
Yeah.
It's like, it's Instagram. And, you know, like last week or this week, actually, I uploaded a reel and I forgot to put the music on. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'm just going to delete it, add the music and upload it again. You know, it's like I didn't.
No big deal.
I didn't.
Nobody died. It's like
no one died.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, and what's interesting also is I am getting reactions, you know, full disclosure. Have I gotten new clients from it? At this point, no, I haven't. And that's okay. But what I am getting is I'm getting views, I'm getting comments, I'm engaging with people, and I am putting things out about my business and also about, you know, where I live and sort of where I live is sort of a secondary character to my reels, which is great. But again, I'm having fun. And that is as much of a surprise, as anything, is that I'm just having fun with them. And they're just, that's basically.
The thing with social media, unless you're specifically asking people or they're specifically telling you, oh, I saw that reel you did and that's why I reached out to you. The reality is we don't know who's watching.
That's
and
true.
We don't know what might prompt them. And one of those random inquiries that comes through your website could very well be a random inquiry that came through your website because of that video that you posted, or somebody sees it and they've saved you for later because they don't need you right now or whatever. But like you said, you're having fun. I just love the fact that you did it. And like, cause you just came out of nowhere and then you're in my feed every day and you just look like you're having fun. And so I just really wanted to ask you about that because I know so many people have such a fear of social media, so many hangups about social media. But if you just jump into it and have some fun with it.
And that's really it, is I'm really not worried about, and the other thing is, as a voiceover talent, I mean, I am not used to being on camera. You know, when I first started this, like, oh my God, I have to be on camera. You know, no, I don't know about, and now I'm like, this is me. I don't, you know, I am who I am, as they say. And I'm just having fun. I really am just having fun with it.
You know what I love about that the most though is like, okay, every single commercial, every single audition that you see, what is it asking for? It's asking for genuine. It's asking for authentic.
Yep.
And you just said, like, the content that you are creating, because you're like, whatever, I don't care. It's just me being me.
Yep.
That is the greatest demonstration of genuineness and authenticity that a casting director or a potential buyer could be looking for, because they're not questioning whether or not this is fake or how pre-produced this is or whatever. You're just going on and having some fun with it. So I love that.
Thank you. Well, that means, coming from you, honestly, that means a lot. I appreciate that.
Whatever you're doing, I'm telling you, it's working. Because like I said, you are I can't open Instagram without seeing something from you right now. So keep doing that thing, because that is working.
Wonderful.
So let's talk telephony, and let's start with, I guess we'll start with maybe a glossary of terms, because we often hear telephony, IVR, on hold, all of these words that are often used interchangeably, but they may be related, but not necessarily the same thing. So let's start with some of the most common terms that we're going to hear to describe this genre, and help us understand what each one of those things are.
Sure. So the overarching term for this genre is telephony. And that encompasses basically two different types of phone messages. There is IVR, which is interactive voice response, and there's message on hold. Okay, those are the two. So interactive voice response is basically anything that tells you to do something. So it is for sales, press 1. For technical support, press 3. For the operator, press 0. That's interactive voice response because you are, it'll say either press or say 1 or press 1 or say 1. That's you're interacting with it.
Yep.
Message on hold is basically exactly that. You're on hold and you're hearing a commercial for the client. Either a commercial or directions or, hey, we've got a new doctor. This is his CV. This is, where he's been, where he studied. Anything that is not telling you to do something, that's generally a message on hold. And so those are the two different types. The other term that you will hear a lot of is a prompt. Now, a prompt, again, is generally with IVR.
Right.
And it is either one instruction of, for sales, press 1, or it can also be a group of, for sales, press 1. For technical support, press 2. For the general AP department, press 3. For the operator, press 4. That can also be considered a prompt. It depends how the system architecture is, how all of these in the flow chart of the business and how this is all built by some IT guy, how that's all set up. And that is important to know because what's going to come up is there are prompts that are all like an entire phrase. For sales, press 1.
Right.
However, if you're dealing with a very large corporation, what you will also sometimes have is for sales, that'll be one prompt. Press 1 will be another prompt.
Right.
And they will put that together. And so another phrase that comes up quite a bit, and that if you're in telephony and you bring this phrase up to a company, they'll think you know what you're talking about, is concatenation. And they will concatenate. They will put those two things together. And so a lot of times when I start working with a large corporation, I will record what's called a system set. And a system set is generally the letters 1 to 100, sometimes 1 to 1,000.
Right.
And then the press 1, press 2, press 3, all the way to 0, press 0, press pound, press hash, press the star key. All of those are separate audio files that will then all be like a jigsaw puzzle put in together to create the entire flow of messages and IVR recordings for the company.
I remember once upon a time, this is going back a few years now, but I had an insurance company reach out to me and they wanted me to record names and they had picked I think it was the 1,000 most common male names and the 1,000 most common female names.
Yep.
And then I had to record the kind of the generic opening message and then 2,000 individual names, and then they were going to piece it together when they were automating the system.
Hello, John.
And I remember about 100 prompts in, I remember going out and buying a brace for carpal tunnel to put on while I was using my mouse while I was editing, ultimately ended up editing 2,000 files or something like that. I was like, man, I don't know if this telephony genre is for me. I was like, this is a lot of work, but that brings us to another question then, which you touched on a little bit, which, different types of systems.
Yes.
One of the things that I have learned from the work that I've done in this genre, and it's been limited, but I've done a bunch of it. There doesn't really seem to be any universal standards, or am I missing it?
In terms of audio format?
Of audio format, but also just in how the systems work.
Oh no, there is.
I've sent in WAV files. I've sent in MP3 files. I've had customers give me their voicemail password and have me call in on the phone and is that changing? Are there getting to be more standards, or is it still just as messed up as always?
It's actually not quite as messed up as it used to be.
Okay.
It used to be that and basically you have to go to before MP3 and after MP3. Because you have to go back to the 80s. On the calendar. I know, right? Before MP3, after MP3.
Before Steve Jobs invented the iPod and after Steve Jobs invented the iPod.
Pretty much. Well, what happened is back in basically the late 80s, early 90s, late 80s, basically, IVR systems were first used by banks. And that is where people first started to hate them because you'd call your bank and you'd expect a person.
I just want to talk to a real person for the love of God. Yes.
Exactly. But thinking back to the 80s, computers were not quite as powerful. I mean, I remember my first computer.
Are you talking smack about my Commodore 64 right now, Liz?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, my first computer, and I'm a PC gal, so, you know, my first computer had a floppy drive and a 20 megabyte hard drive. And I was given the option of buying a 40 megabyte hard drive. And I'm like, I'm never going to need a 40 megabyte hard drive.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's like, you know. So what happened is there was a concerted effort, like a decision that was made that they sacrificed quality for the size of the file. Okay. Right. And so they could fit a whole bunch of more files, but they all came up with tons of different formats. So there was IVC, there was Vox, there was Wave, there was, you know, just, you know, Oki data, there was CCITT, there's all these different formats, which is when I started, you know, people were like, here's my system. This is the Wave. This is the format I need. And it's one of the reasons that I'm so versed in it is because I started when I had to know about all of those different formats.
I still remember the first time I had to Google how the heck to make an 8-bit 8K EULA wave. Yep. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. And exactly. There's no setting for this. What the heck?
Yeah, CCITT MULA wave, which is also known as ITT, which is also known as, you know, 64K, you know, then there's the 64K dialogic, which is 8-bit 8K Vox. And, you know, so there were a ton of them out there back in the day. Honestly, once MP3s came along, and actually what we used to do is we used to record all of these files onto generally when I was doing either a zip drive or a DAT file, and we would FedEx them to the companies and they would put them into their system. You know, this
pre-email.
I mean, oh my God. Yes. Oh, absolutely. This, you know, I'm old. What can I tell you? But there were a ton of files.
Yep.
As computer systems have improved, there are still some legacy formats out there. The main one that is a legacy format that is still being used is the one you mentioned, is the CCITT MULA.wave file. Yep. Okay. That is still used quite frequently, but a lot of the modern DAWs actually can create that file. Now, generally, you can send your clients either generally a 44.1 16-bit wave file or an MP3 file or a 128K MP3 file. That's becoming much more common, especially if you're working with production companies. If you're working with a production company, generally you're either sending an MP3 or you're sending a regular 16-bit 44.1 wave file, and they'll take care of the conversion for you. If you're dealing with clients directly, the most common that I get that's not sort of general wave or MP3 or PCM wave or MP3 is the CCITT MULA wave file. And most DAWs now can convert to that format. So it's not, people don't have to be as afraid of, you know, eyes glazing up. Because I mean, you know, the people would call me. It's like, I don't know. Can you, you know, like, just, it's okay. Just
hey, ChatGPT, how the heck do I create this legacy file for my...
Exactly. Oh, and then, you know, and the thing is, there were then, I mean, I have, you know, one voice talent that I used to record, or she used to send me the recordings, and it was a wave file that was then actually had to be enveloped in another file so it was a file within a file that could then be used on that system. That, you know, that was yet another, you know. And so what I did actually, and this was because I really leaned into telephony because I started doing that at the beginning of my career, is there used to be a company that apparently no longer exists. I still have their software. It was, you know, it cost like $700 to buy this piece of software, but because it's sort of tools in the toolbox. You know, I knew that I was leaning into this genre of voiceover. And so this piece of software could convert to all of the legacy formats and all of the, you know, and it served me, I way got my money back because I did so much work in so many of these formats and a lot of people couldn't convert to them. There's a handful of us, you know, that started in this genre that bought this piece of software. And we became the resource, you know, and I could do pretty much anything. That's much less needed now. Most of the time, what you're going to be asked for is either a PCM 16-bit WAV file, 16-bit 44.1, a 128K MP3, and sometimes a CCITT MULA WAV file. But there are fewer legacy formats out there simply because those computer systems have become obsolete and people have upgraded. But it took a while because think about it. You've got a huge bank that has this legacy system.
Yeah.
And it's
not just going out and buying a new phone, right? Like,
no, there are thousands upon thousands of voice files that need to be, re-recorded.
Yep.
And that's the thing about telephony is, no, it's not very glamorous, but there are updates all the time. People leave, people, change jobs. There are new locations that get opened. It is something. And so very often what will happen with telephony work is one of the first things that a client will ask you is, hey, do you plan to be around for a while? Because they don't want to have to re-record all of these files. They want to keep the voice consistent. So that's, that there is a lot of work that once you get in, especially with the larger corporations, even with production studios, that will keep coming back because there are always updates.
I know that's one of the things that I've noticed is, I don't have a lot of telephony clients. I've got a few that I've been working with for years though. Right. And it's kind of like quarterly. Often it's quarterly because, different seasons or, different hours and stuff like that. But then definitely, I get a message in the morning, hey, can you update? Because we've got a new employee coming in or, a new, somebody's just gone out or whatever. And so there is definitely an opportunity for that ongoing work. So would you suggest, I know with e-learning, I keep files because I've had clients come back to me 5 years later and say, hey, can you update this module that you did for us and whatever? Sounds like telephony is probably the same deal. If you get one of these jobs, hold on to everything.
Storage.
We're digital hoarders of everything else. Why not keep our telephony files, right?
I mean, people talk about Gmail and a zero inbox. Are you kidding me? I have 200,000 emails in my but I can find something that you sent me back in 2010. So yes, I generally keep everything. What happens with telephony is every once in a while, a client will say, hey, you recorded this back for us in 2 or 3 years ago. We have some updates. They'll just say, just re-record it. But sometimes, and this has happened a few times, where again, a client that you may have recorded one format in, they'll say, hey, we've switched systems. Do you still have the files and can you convert them to another format? Which is why what I tell people when they do telephony work, always record in 16-bit 44.1, do all your editing in that high quality format, keep all of those files, because then you can take that and you can basically reformat to whatever, because it's always going to be a down sample, not an up sample. You can't really up sample because it's not going to sound as good, but you can down sample from 16-bit 44.1 to anything. So yes, I generally keep everything.
And talk about an incredible opportunity to be the hero and win the day, right? Oh my gosh,
absolutely.
You want to build customer loyalty, provide second to none customer service. If you have the ability to go back and say, I have everything, you are legend at that point.
And I have been the hero a couple of times to clients. It's like, we don't know what we did with these files and they're not on the server. And do you have them? And, so yeah, and it doesn't happen that often, but yeah, when it does, you've definitely ensconced yourself into that client's heart.
So let's talk about the actual recording of the files. Again, e-learning, I know, they'll send me a script and it'll have all the different slides and they want a different audio file for the different slides. And usually there's a very specific naming structure for each one of them and stuff.
Oh, yes.
Similar in telephony? Okay.
Oh, and it can be, it can be 10 or 12 characters, with one little difference in between. I use a piece of software that I was actually one of the beta testers for. Unfortunately, it's only PC based, but I have actually colleagues that I've turned on to it that actually have PCs and that use, I think it's Parallels or Boot Camp.
Yeah, a virtual machine thing or something.
Exactly. It's called Word to Wave. So the word, the number 2, WAV. It is an amazing piece of software, and it has saved me, when I say literally, hundreds upon hundreds of hours of time of renaming files? It has. And basically what it is, it's a piece of software that you can take either an Excel spreadsheet with the file name in the left column and the script in the right column, or a Word table with the script in the left column, with the name in the left column and the script in the right. You import that into this software and click, and you record, you stop, and it cuts the file and names the file for you at the same time. And then you go on to the next one and the next one and the next one. And so you have all the files named and split. And then you can go in and if, listen back to them. If you made a mistake, you can re-record it.
Tweak something.
And what I do is I record everything in Word to Wave, and then I open everything up in SoundForge and do all my editing in SoundForge and do all of my converting in SoundForge, and off you go. Yeah.
I'm assuming this would be a question that if you get a script from somebody and it doesn't have very clear instruction, maybe it's somebody who's never done the phone system before or whatever, it's worth asking ahead of time. Is there a specific file format that you need? Is there a specific audio spec? Is there a specific naming structure, right?
Always. And so generally what I do if a new client comes to me and says, hey, we found you online. We'd like to possibly hire you to do this phone system. What's the process? And so I actually have an email template that I send where I spell all that out, where I spell it out saying, hey, it will make it a lot easier for, actually, I don't say it's going to be easier for me. What I say is I will get you the files more quickly if you send me the audio script in either a Word format, a Word table, or an Excel spreadsheet. And then I can provide you all the files in, with the names that you give them much more quickly. And then the other thing that happens with Word to Wave is that if it finds a file with a double name, it'll automatically rename that file with the original file name _X2. Right. So again, you become the hero and say, hey, by the way, I noticed that there were 2 files or 3 files that were named the same. Here is how I renamed them for you. Just wanted to let you know. Again, you become the hero. And I tell them that it makes it easier on them. I can get you the files more quickly. What it does, it makes my life a hell of a lot easier. But to them, what I say is I can get you the files more quickly if you send them to me, if you send the script to me in this format.
Mass appeal, and then right? Everybody wants it faster, right?
Exactly. And so that's, they don't care if it makes my life easier. What they care about is, can I get the files a day earlier? Okay, we'll format the script however she wants it. And the other thing is that it allows me to, like I said, the file names are all there the way they wrote them. I don't have to worry about mistyping something. It's the way, I just import it exactly the way they wrote them. And then I also, of course, always ask what file format, what audio format they need. And what's really interesting, a lot of talent come to me and say, hey, the client said they wanted a WAV file. Okay, what kind of WAV file?
There's a lot of options for WAV files.
There's a lot that, and a lot of talent that are starting out are afraid to ask. Yes. They're afraid that they're going to look stupid to the client. I'm like, no, you have to understand. You asking the correct question to this person saying, hey, I want to provide the correct audio format to you. That's not you looking stupid. That's you knowing what you're doing.
Looking stupid is when you do it on the back end after it's too late, right?
Exactly. And so I always ask ahead of time. And I also, what happens is you've got a lot of different types of clients. So with production houses, generally, they'll tell you, hey, we want it as an MP3 or a WAV file. You don't need to split them up. Just send them to us. Great. With large corporations, generally they will know exactly what they want and how they want it and what the format is and all of that. With a smaller company or a mom and pop place, they will send you the script and those, okay, what audio format? We don't know. Yeah. Okay. So this is where the education comes in and where again, voice talent ask, like, how do I keep track of all the different phone systems out there? You don't. That is not, there is no way you could do that. And that is not part of your
That's
job.
what Google and Wikipedia are for.
Yeah.
Let them figure that part out.
You know, it's up to them. And basically what I tell them two things. I said, if you have an IT guy, ask your IT person, or go back to the manual of your phone system, or your phone system vendor, and ask them, because they will be able to tell you what format their system needs. But that is not for the voice talent to decide. Because what happens if you try to guess, your files are not going to play on their system. And they're going to be like, your files sound like crap. Why do they sound awful? Because you guessed it. Oh, he wanted a WAV file. I'll give him a 16-bit 44.1. Yeah, it's not going to play on a CCITT MULA requiring format.
Oh my gosh. The first time that I actually had to send out the ULAW thing, I was like, I can't send this. This is like, I'm embarrassed to even have this played. And they're like, no, it sounds better when it's in the system. And I'm like, there's no way this could sound better when it's in the system.
It does.
So really what it comes down to, I mean, it sounds like, and I mean, this goes for any genre, but telephony in particular, it really is paying attention to the details, right? There's a lot of little things that you've got to know up front, and you can't be afraid to ask the questions if you're going to do it well. And it's not about looking stupid. It's about providing exceptional service, really. Well, is what it comes down to.
And they will be impressed that you know to ask those questions. Because I've had clients like, oh, I didn't think of that. Oh, right. Okay, let me go find out. You know, because there is no way, nor should you know all of the hardware that's out there. That it's just impossible. And 9 times out of 10 now, you know, the 3 formats that I get asked, I'd say 95% of the time now is a CCITT MULA, just a regular PCM 44 116-bit or 128 MP3 file. Those are the 3 main formats that I deal with now. But, you know, every once in a while, someone will come up and say, hey, I have XYZ. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. You know.
So I'm potentially opening up a Pandora's box here, so I'll tread lightly when it comes to the subject of rates.
Okay. No, that's fine.
But I want to talk rates because one of the questions that does get asked a lot, and I put it out to some people. You know, I'm going to be doing this interview. Is there anything you'd like to know? Rates, obviously, one of the questions that comes up.
Right.
Generally speaking, it looked to me like on the GVAA rate guide, they provide kind of like what I would guess say a standard rate, but. I look at telephony and I liken it to commercial in that a local commercial does not command the same rate as a national commercial. And so generally local rates are lower, right? Local rates are lower than national commercials.
Not honestly, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Because the thing is the work is the same.
Yes.
And so, okay, if you've got somebody that comes to me and says, you know, it's just me, it's my one store, you know, I will quote them my normal rate.
Okay.
And so here's the way that I have my rate structure, and this has worked the best for me, is I have a session fee, and then I have a per prompt rate. So per prompt is per prompt / audio file. Okay. And generally that's between 50 and 75 words for a prompt. Okay. I generally charge the same for whether it's a corporation or a regional place, because what happens is my session fee is the same. Where you get, you know, more bang for your buck is how many audio files are you going to be creating.
So if the mom and shop's just asking for a single on hold message versus the bank that needs 1,000 prompts, that's where the scale comes. Okay.
That's where the scale comes. Okay. So sometimes, you know, but on the flip side of that, generally the large corporations don't balk at the fact that there's a session fee and a per prompt rate. You know, so, you know, it just as in every other genre, there's a negotiation that happens, you know, sometimes. And yes, you know, I have clients that are at a lower rate because they've been with me for 15 years and it is what it is, you know?
Yep, sure.
So, but it's different from commercial in that there isn't so much that split between regional, local, you know, it happens on a less of a granular level in a sense, because I have a rate and frankly, I've been doing this long enough that I know what my rate is commensurate with most of the stuff that I'm working with. So, but my rate is obviously higher than it was when I first started almost 20 years ago. So, but it's really a matter of feeling. I am a huge believer, and I know this might sound woo-woo-ish, but I'm a huge believer in when you send out a quote, if you send out a quote going, I don't know if they're going to like this. The
energy that goes out with that.
It does. Yeah. It does.
It sounds wooish, and a couple of years ago I would have mocked you, but now I'm totally on board with you.
It's the truth. Yep. It's like until I am completely comfortable with the quote I'm sending out, I do not send it out.
Yeah.
And so, and full disclosure, the GVAA Rate guide, who did they call about the telephony rate structure? So yeah, I know it.
So you had some input there?
I had a little bit of input, yeah.
Right on. Okay.
And so yes, and those rates, and they still and the rates honestly for telephony haven't changed that much.
Sure.
Now, we can talk about the elephant in the room of AI,
Liz, why do you got to go there? We were having such a good, pleasant, happy conversation. Why you got to go there?
We'll get to that. But the rates, generally the rates haven't changed much, but it's really, there is still, and I do believe this, because there is still a lot of work out there for telephony work. Everybody was told like, the first place to go is e-learning and telephony. Yeah, that is where the thing that people have to remember with telephony, it is the first point of contact with a potential client.
Yep.
So your company, if you've got big corporation and you've got a robot when they first call, your end user, the end user being the person that calls you, is not going to be happy. As it is that nobody likes IVR systems. And I own that. I get it, but to have a system that is sounding robotic, that has no inflection, I am not a believer that telephony work is going to go away, because it is too important to the image of corporations to have someone that sounds local, that sounds human, that sounds friendly. All of those things still have a place. And so
I had Bev Standing on the show, and we did an entire episode on the subject of AI.
Sure.
And she actually gave an example that she had heard where her local cable company, she called into her local cable company, and the system was recorded by a synthetic voice, and it actually continually mispronounced the name of the company. But nobody had apparently caught it.
Oh my God.
And I was like, well, that makes a strong use case for humans. So we're still going to be safe for a while. Now, look, I want to have the AI conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's one more question I want to ask on rates before we go there. Just retainers. So, it's a question that comes up in telephony.
Yeah,
so
do you have
any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. No, I have a couple of clients that I have on retainer, and it's great. Generally, a retainer, the way it would work would be, okay, I will record X number of prompts for you per month or per week.
Okay.
And so if you record, like you say, okay, I'm going to record, 20 prompts for you per week. If it's a company that is, that they're going to be sending you a lot of stuff. If they send you 10 prompts, same rate as if they sent you 20. But if they send you 21, well, you have to have a rate for, okay, the extra.
Right.
Retainers are great because it's set income,
Guaranteed, right? It's coming.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And that is generally with a larger corporation or a larger production studio. But yeah, absolutely. And it's generally, so that's generally not a session fee and per prompt rate. It's more of a set, how many prompts, it will cover in a set week or a set month. Okay. So yeah, absolutely. If you can set up a retainer.
Is that something where you would map that out and say, look, if you sign up for 12 months at this many prompts per month, it's, it's X rate, and you could show maybe a slight discount versus regular rate or something? Or do you just price it out at your rate? Or
it's generally a little bit less than my regular rate.
Okay.
But, and I have a client who's been a very good client, and, I have a set retainer with them every week, and I haven't raised my rates in about 2 or 3 years, because very often I get less than what we had agreed to per week. So I'm like, it all comes out, it all comes out in the wash. And I'm, never have to, the other thing is never have to chase them for money, never, all these things have, a factor into all of the rate discussions and how you're going to get paid and, all of that. So retainers are great.
My understanding with the retainer thing too, and comment on this if you have a different thought, but for a lot of companies, particularly like maybe when you get into medium and larger companies, it's just a lot easier for them to budget a line item for a year in advance versus a monthly expense, right? And so if you offer them the retainer, they may, with a 1-year contract, for example, they may be more likely to just sign off on it because it's easier to factor it into the budget.
Yes.
True or false?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And what will happen, especially with production companies, and this is the difference between working directly with a client and working with a production company. So my retainer agreements are generally with, actually, no, I have both. So, I do have both. I have both with a production company and with a direct client. But what happens is it's somebody who is going to be giving you work on a regular basis. And so I generally don't get into a retainer agreement with a client until I see that, okay, they're sending me work on a regular basis, and then we can talk about that. A lot of times the difference between rates for a direct client and rates with a production company is a production company generally works with a whole bunch of talent.
Right.
And so what I tell voice talent who come to me asking me, hey, what's the rate for a production company? That's all over the place. There are production companies that are per half hour of your time, per hour of your time, per prompt, per word. There are still production companies that do per word. And honestly, you take it or leave it with production companies, because they are not going to make a separate agreement with you when they have 50 other voice talent that they work with. It's like, take it or you leave it. And what I tell voice talent to do, it's like, take it. Okay, yeah, it's not great, but see how much work they give you.
Yep.
And if it's worth your time, if it's your gas money, or if it's your heating bill for the month, or it's your, grocery bill for the week, great. If it doesn't work for you, then you can always walk away. But I always tell talent, don't walk away before you've at least given it a shot. You've got nothing to lose.
Yep.
And so the rates with production companies to the talent are generally less because, one, you're not doing any of the marketing. You're generally not doing any of the editing. You send them one long WAV file.
Right.
You're not doing the converting. So you're basically but also you're not auditioning.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
That's nice.
They send you work. I mean, I get work every day from production companies. Here, do this. Yep. It's like, okay, easy. And then, and when you're dealing with a direct client, yes, then you can have the session fee, the per prompt rate, but you've done all of that footwork that you didn't have to do with the production company. So, there's that.
So, see, now we got to go back there because you started.
Sorry.
Now we got to go back there. We got to talk about AI a little bit more. Although
it's actually going to be a short conversation.
I'm
honestly
encouraged by what you said. Now, but here's the difference.
Yeah.
Everything that you said is perfectly logical, right? The human touch, not making us suffer through robots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is the rational, logical, intelligent response to the conversation.
Intelligent.
Capitalism sometimes doesn't always involve those things when it conflicts with profit and bottom line.
Yes.
And AI is certainly going to be, or synthetic voice is certainly going to be a cheaper option. First thing I'm curious about, because you work in this space a lot, have you had any feedback from clients, production companies, et cetera, that are saying we're moving in direction of AI? Or are you getting, we're doubling down on human because AI stinks?
I have had all of the clients that I do telephony work, they have all said that their clients, and these are large corporations,
right?
They're like, no, we're going to stay human right now. We have no desire to. And again, because keep in mind, these systems are huge with thousands upon thousands of audio files that they would have to switch over.
It's not an easy thing to just change it all out.
It's not an easy thing to do. It's not so easy to switch over 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 audio files, you know, from one voice to a synthetic voice. And the other thing that people say, well, there's the turnaround time. My turnaround time can be the same day. So that's that's something that my clients know.
We're not talking about network television promos here. Like if you got to wait 2 hours for a new prompt, it's this is not the end of the world, right? Like
exactly. Yeah. Now, will there be, I mean, I'm not an idiot, complete idiot. You know, yes, will there be some that go to that route? Yes, but it's almost like a pendulum swinging back. That's how it started, you know, where we had these synthetic voices that sounded like crap. And so they went human. And then now it's like, oh, well, it's gone cheaper. Let's try it again. And the other thing is, Mark, is I don't have the bandwidth and I have no control over that. None. I have no control over what a company is going to decide, whether they're going to go with a human or whether they're going to go with a synthetic voice. I am going to continue to reach out to people and to work with my clients and do what I do. I did have one client of mine who actually sent me a script that was saying, well, if you want to, you can choose a human voice or you can choose, you know, an AI voice. And I literally, I got into the booth and I hadn't read the script beforehand. And I went in and I'm like, it's sort of like, you know, the cartoon, you know, it's like, wait a minute, you know, and I called him up. I called up my contact and I said, I can't record this. I said, what you're asking me to do is and they completely understood, but I said, you're asking me to tell people, hey, choose me or choose a synthetic voice. I don't feel comfortable doing that. Now, keep in mind, it's one of my first clients from 20 years ago, you know, that's still a client of mine. And I felt comfortable enough doing that. Although, you know, to be honest, it was when I first saw it, I was like, oh man, okay, what am I going to do with this? And I sort of walked out of my booth and I sat down in my office and I'm like, what am I going to do? And I just in good conscience couldn't sit there and record a script saying, choose a synthetic voice. I just couldn't do it.
Right.
And they, you know, to their credit, they completely understood. They're like, nope, we get it. Totally get it. Did they get another voice talent to record it? Maybe. I don't know. But I know that what I did was, you know, it's like, I can't record that. I just can't do it. So, but I'm still getting work. I still get telephony work every single day. Again, you know, in both languages, you know, so it's not, is the sky falling? I don't know.
I've asked this question to several different voice actors in podcast interviews now over the last bit of interviews that I've done. Yeah. And the biggest reason why I asked the question is because if you exist inside of the Facebook bubble of the voiceover industry, it's overwhelmingly the sky is falling and we're all doomed and this is the beginning of the end. Like that just feels like the narrative.
Yes.
And so the reason why I ask the question, and people are going to get sick of it because I ask the same question on every podcast lately, it feels like it, but the reason why I ask the question is because I want to hear from actual working pros who are saying, yes, my business has been massively impacted by AI, or no, my business has not been remotely impacted by AI, and paint a realistic picture from actual working pros. Yeah. And I will say overwhelmingly to this point, it has been, no, it's not even a blip on the radar. Everett talked about that when we talked about commercial animation. I had talked about that when we talked about political. I asked Bev specifically in the interview that I did with her. Like,
if anybody to ask would be her,
And so it's encouraging to hear that. And I mean, yes, we can make that argument of, you know, human voices are better and blah, 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 blah. And you know, let's hold on to that optimism and, you know, put that positive energy out there. Let's market that strategy.
Hashtag hire human.
Right. But at the end of the day, you know, bottom lines make decisions sometimes. But to this point, I'm just not seeing evidence And
Yeah,
that's not to say that I want to stick my head in the sand or pretend like it's
No.
all sunshine and rainbows. I don't see evidence that makes me think that it's as nearly as bleak as some people think that it is.
And what's interesting is I've had some, and I'll be honest with you, I've had some drop off this year in the e-learning space, which I find really interesting. But I have not had any drop off in telephony. I've had none in telephony. My telephony work is the same as it ever was. So, and I find it really interesting. And again, I have no way of knowing. I find it interesting that if you're trying to teach somebody something that you would use an AI voice. I don't know. But the thing is, I can only do and control what I have control over, which is me and my business.
Yep.
And I can't, and using bandwidth of, oh my God, the sky is falling. I can't. I think that, and I don't think that serves anybody.
Yep.
Because my clients keep coming back and they're still, so, but again, on the telephony side, I can be completely upfront that side of my business has not, and it's a big part of my business.
Yep.
It's the foundation of my business, and that has not suffered at all. So
now that we know that this is still a potentially lucrative genre, you've just, spilled the beans on that. We know that we're still safe. Yeah. I'm curious. I know you've talked about rosters. So there are production companies that are out there, just like there are production companies that do commercial or production companies that do e-learning. There are production companies out there that do message on hold and IVR, I'm assuming. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that would be one place that we could be looking for work. If we wanted to try to go directly to a corporation or, a larger business or whatever, I'm assuming there's not a chief telephony officer that we can look up on LinkedIn.
No.
Who's generally responsible for this?
So that's a great question. It's actually a great question. Generally, it's somebody in IT.
Okay. I would never have guessed that.
Yeah. It's generally somebody in IT because they are the ones that actually upload the files to the servers, and they have the whole flow chart of how things go and how things are built. So I would look at the three places that generally are the people that deal with this. The IT, somebody in IT, if it's a large enough corporation.
Okay.
Somebody in HR.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of these that are, this person's voicemail and that person's voicemail. And marketing, because a lot of what I do is outbound. So there's outbound messages. Okay. So those are generally the three, the three prongs of who I would reach out to. If you're looking at a large corporation, I would start with the IT person, because they are the ones that sometimes they'll write it, but they are generally the ones who know the formats and who know who to get in touch with and how the system is built. They're the ones that are the system architects of the whole phone system. Okay. So those are the three. It's IT, HR, and marketing.
You just brought up another point that I was going to ask about earlier, and I forgot. You mentioned about, the IT people sometimes are the ones that write it. As a voice actor, do you ever do any or offer any value add? Like, do you offer script writing, or I will mix your music in, or anything like that? Or are you just doing strictly voiceover?
Generally, I will not. I've very rarely been asked to write anything, and I generally won't. What does happen, this is where the bilingual thing comes in. Yep. What does happen very often still is I'll get hired for both the English and the French side of a phone prompt system. And what I always ask is, what is the source language? Like, which is the first one? Was it a French script that was translated to English, or was it an English script translated to French?
Okay. Yep.
9 times out of 10 for me, the English came first and the French came second.
Okay.
I can usually tell that pretty quickly. And so what does happen is I will always record the source prompts first.
Okay.
And then I go and record the French. And what's really interesting is, even though, I won't remember every single one, but I've done this long enough that invariably I will see something and like, wait a minute, that's not what the English said.
Right.
And I'll go back. And again, being the hero to your client of like, absolutely. Hey, the English says this, the French says this. Just wanted to check and make sure that was right. And so I do a lot of, it's more of a QC, making sure that things match up. And I don't, it's almost second nature to me now that I do this, that, I'll record the source file, the source language first, and then I'll go through, and then I generally try to edit things within 24 to 48 hours, if it's a large system, because that still keeps it in my head.
Sure.
And so I don't generally do writing per se, but I will do QCing as I go along. Adding music, sometimes I do. Actually, sometimes I do that for other voice talent because they deal with a smaller company and they don't, so I will, I'll sometimes do that. I have the capabilities to do that. Although I had bought a music library back in, the early 2000s. And it's like, the 90s are calling and want my music library back. So
everything that is old is new again, Liz. That music is coming back. It's what everybody's going to want on their system. So you are going to be sitting on a gold mine here.
There you go. Because my backtracks, they're just like, seriously. It's like I was listening to.
Have you ever heard good background music when you've been sitting and waiting on hold? I think that's part of the stipulation, right?
There you go.
If you have the really bad music, it distracts from the narration when it happens to be a synthetic voice or a really bad voiceover, right?
Exactly. So I've done it. It's not a huge part of my business, but yes, I can do it. But it's more, I'm more of a QC person because again, think about it. Someone's creating this 1,000 prompt file system, and they've looked at it 20 times. And then I come back and sometimes I'll come back with like 5 or 6 different things. And I've had some clients like, I can't believe this. I've looked at this so many times. And I said, that's why.
That's why.
So many times.
Too many times.
It's okay. And I, my pat, hashtag, to my client is, hashtag teamwork, that's that. And I consider that part of my job.
Yep.
I consider that part of my job to make sure that the prompts are matching up, that they're, that what they're saying makes sense. And, translations, I mean, look, that's another huge issue when you're dealing with bilingual is who did the translation of the files.
Yep.
I generally don't do translation. I hate it. I just, as much as I am a native speaker of French, translation is an art as much as a science. And I've done it. I've done it for short jobs. Clients are like, hey, can you just translate these couple of sentences? Yes, I will absolutely do that for a fee. There's always a charge for translation.
You're the expert in voiceover. You do the voiceover thing. Let the expert in translation do
exactly.
the translation
And so I have a couple of people that and I tell them, I said, if you get this translated, please hire a human to translate it. Because, I've had stuff come to me of, for sales, press 1, and it'll be la presse 1, which is media, like the news media. The news media 1. I'm like, no, that's
oops.
No.
See, there's still a use case for humans. We're still going to be useful for a little while.
Yes.
Well, Liz, this has been like a masterclass in IVR, and I'm so grateful to you for doing that. I think it's one of those genres that gets overlooked because people think about commercial and animation and gaming and these big sexy genres with big sexy credits, and nobody gets excited about telephony. But it seems to me like find a handful of good clients, maybe focus on some retainers. Like you can build a pretty solid foundation of an income for yourself.
Absolutely. It's not glamorous, although it is fun. I mean, I have friends all over the, Canada and the US that call me up and say, hey, so I had a problem with my credit card and I got you on the phone. So thank you for keeping me calm. Yeah. It's like, or, hey, did I just order pizza from you?
See, that's fun. That's fun.
Actually, it is fun. It is fun. And I didn't, and this is not being humble or anything. I did not get into this business, for the glamour of it. Yeah. I love it and it's fun.
Yep.
And I enjoy my work. And this has been a foundation of my business. And like you said, when people say telephony, in our community, 9 times out of 10, my name will come up.
Yeah, your name is the name that comes up. Yep.
You know, so, and that's great. And I love it. I love that I'm able to help. And I love that because, you know, people talk about when they first start in voiceover, like, hey, you know, what's the first demo you've got to do? You know, my first demo was a telephony demo. I didn't get my first professionally produced commercial demo until 5 years into my career.
Thank you for saying that, because I make that argument with people, not specifically about telephony, but just that so often we're told it's got to be commercial first. And I'm saying, no, go into the genre where you can make the most money the fastest based on your skill set, your interests, whatever, and then add those other things later. And telephony could certainly be one of those genres.
And it's not, you know, it's the other thing that it's similar with in terms of commercial work is, especially with message on hold stuff, is it is like a commercial for the company. Yep. You know, you're talking about, you know, how when they were founded and, you know, what great products they have. And, you know, so you've got to sound like you know what you're talking about. Sure. You have to sound, you know, conversational, you know. That word. Exactly. But so it's whatever skills, and this is what I tell people, is whatever skills you learned when you're working with a coach for commercial work or e-learning or in-show narration or whatever, all of that can translate into telephony. Right. Because you are literally, they always say, talk to one person. You're literally talking to one person. You are in their headphones. You're on their phone. They're okay. I'm like dating myself with this, you know, it's like this now. You know, so all of the things that you learn when you're coaching with somebody can all be, you know, transferred to the telephony genre because you're talking to one person. You have to be conversational. You know, you have to look at the script and you have to know how to pronounce a whole bunch with medical stuff. I mean, how many names, you know, and medical offices have I done with names and procedures and, you know, so all of that stuff can, you know, comes into play.
Right. So look, if this has been incredible, and I know you said that you've helped some voice actors with this before. If somebody wanted to reach out, ask a question, maybe something I didn't think of or we didn't cover in the interview, how can we get a hold of you? And how do we find you on Instagram? Because everybody's got to follow you on Instagram so that they can be inspired by your reels that you're doing as well.
So my Instagram is Hire Liz VO, HIRELIZVO. That's my Instagram. Okay. And my email is really easy. It's liz@hireliz.com. Okay. Liz@hireliz.com. And my website is hireliz.com.
We'll put that in the show notes as well so that it's easy for people to find. But definitely everybody's got to follow you on Instagram and see what's going on. Well, Liz, thank you so much. I mean, you literally just dropping knowledge bomb after knowledge bomb.
This was fun. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for asking me. This was fun.
Yeah. And thank you for your willingness to share. I truly do appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You're awesome.